Together, on fire, through the storm and the fire, darkness, turn to right on the no call, the least of these, the cross, serving protection. Hold on to the night. The scene's bright, no cameras, no fame, and tell through the badges calling out the names. The rest in the paper, soldiers in the net. Living more tonight, but there's more coming yet from Louisville streets to the East Texas. Mamas and daddies praying for the lost and the blind. We take a day to rest and back in the fray, 'cause the children don't sleep while the hunters play. It's heavy, this weight we carry. But grace ain't cheap, and love's got teeth. In the bathroom mirrors, we see our own scars, redeemed for this hour. Under God's grace, the stars circle protection. Join round and tight, hands together, hearts on fire. The fire, great shepherd lead through the valley of shadow. Restore the survivors, make the broken family. Don't you know, Jesus' name we stand. Watch the darkness fall. Circle up down on through the night. The children form the circle. Shepherds watch. Join the fight. That was the awesome song Shepherd's Watch, made by Soulful Squirrel Studios. That's a mouthful. Some of you know him as Rob Rivera, the flag guy on X. He is amazing, and he put that song together for us. So that is what we start off with now, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as we do. Go ahead, Kim, and then we're going to start talking. Go for it.
Okay, Michelle is, oh, the other Michelle is having some issues. 10, would you please check your messages? Because I don't know how to tell her what to do. So, and again, welcome everybody to the space. I see my friends before, and Mimi, and Common Sense. How you doing? So, welcome to the space, y'all. But yeah, if you could just let us know what we can do to help Michelle. Oh, and I see Shell in the space as well. Didn't mean to not say hello to you too, girlfriend. So please like, retweet, postmark, bookmark. I've not had enough caffeine, and it's been one of those days on top of that. So yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Brandy. I'm gonna quit talking now.
I love it. Well, thank y'all for joining us. And thank you, co host. Mist, I know you're pretty quiet until you're ready to talk, so I won't put you on the spot and make you say something right now. Go ahead, Zach, and then I would like to play something to introduce our guest. Awesome. Well, we'll definitely give time to for that at the end. I am pulling up. Sorry, guys. I literally like slid into my driveway. I'm trying to get the shepherd's watch. All right, there it is. All right, we are going to play to introduce Michelle because she does have to share the story a lot. We're going to do it a little different this time. We are going to share her story. We're going to listen to it first, and then I will introduce her and have her start talking to the space. Let me get this pulled up real quick. Do I see any other hands up? Okay, no, I don't. I just wanted to make sure. All right, here we go. And it was on NBC5. I love it. All right, here we go, guys. Someone give Miss Liz a mic, please.
NBC5 investigates. Imagine discovering that your teenager has been receiving thousands of text messages from a teacher, many sexually explicit, dozens in the middle of the night. You might believe your child would tell you if this happened, but as NBC5's Phil Rogers discovered, that's not always the case. The story unfolded here in Morris, southwest of Chicago, as middle America as it comes.
He wanted to make a sex video, put it straight out there.
Andrew Kozik says he had begun texting Stefan Belegno, a teacher here at Morris High School, because he was having trouble on the baseball team. But before long, he says Belegno was offering him money for oral sex.
It started off at $500 and then $1,000 and then $1,500.
But Andrew never told anyone, and no one knew until his mother heard him talking to Belegno on the phone.
He has no business calling you at 11 o'clock at night. That's completely inappropriate.
When she learned the two had been communicating by text message, Andrew's mother went to her computer and logged into the family's account. She found thousands of messages.
I was just sick because I knew in my heart, I'm like, this isn't just regular text messaging.
The family went to police, who searched Andrew's phone and found nearly 6,000 messages between the two. But only about a tenth of those could be recovered. And indeed, they are troubling. We can't read some of the more graphic messages, but among the more benign, the teacher writes, "When does the kissing begin?" "Icky," the student says. "How about if we just go at it and not video it?" the teacher declares. And on another occasion, "When you're 18, we can give each other everything."
Sometimes males to bond with males are crude.
Raymond Wigel is Belegno's lawyer. He insists the teacher was only trying to help Andrew through a bullying incident on the baseball team.
You say that these text messages do not indicate criminal activity. They certainly indicate stupidity for a teacher to be sending these messages. Absolutely.
Wigel says he and his client concede bad judgment, but they point to the thousands of other texts no one read, as well as huge gaps in the transcripts.
There's a stupid intent, but there was not an evil intent to have sex with this young man.
I don't care what context you put it in. When you offer somebody money for sex, that's solicitation.
So why didn't Andrew tell someone? Records show at one point he even told a DCFS investigator the teacher's messages had not crossed the line.
Why'd you tell him?
I didn't want to lose his job. I didn't want him to get in trouble.
Belegno was found guilty of indecent solicitation of a minor and unlawful grooming. He is to be sentenced next month.
I want him to have to register as a sex offender. The jail time would just be icing on the cake.
Michelle Peterson says she and her son wanted to talk to us to stress the importance of reporting incidents like this. 18 of these texts were after midnight, 15 after 3 a.m. The Grundy County State's attorney says he believes it's a cautionary tale about giving children digital technology this Christmas without firm guidelines on how it will be used.
Wow. Michelle, you've been here a few times, but for those that don't know you, that story is gut wrenching. It's every parent's worst nightmare. So welcome to the space again, and I want to thank you for being as open as you are and speaking on this and what you're doing. Go ahead and update us. How are you? What is going on lately?
Yes, good. Well, that's a loaded question. Things are extremely busy, probably with a lot of people who are on here. But thank you again for having me. I know I was on a space last week that Hope Beryl Green was on, and so that's kind of how this all came to fruition to have me on this week. So I'm grateful that you guys are having me on. I know you've had a little bit of a hiatus, and to be on your first show back, I'm grateful for that and to spread this information. because people need to be aware of what grooming is and how to prevent it and what it looks like. So that story that you just heard, my son was 19 in that video, but and I posted the video in the purple pill so people can actually see it if they want to go back and watch it. But he was 15 when this teacher started texting him. The teacher was 34. So he was a baseball coach. He didn't have him in class per se, but was a baseball coach and took advantage of that bullying incident. And that's kind of what they do is they try to find some gateway or a hole, in that kid or some vulnerability where they can go in and try to get between the child and the parent to make it look like they are someone that they can trust and someone that um, they can turn to if they need anything. And that's sort of how that happens. So it doesn't start off with those text messages that my son referred to. It starts off very benign, right? That, hey, I'm here for you if you need anything. I know your mom's busy. I know that she's working a lot. Kind of gaining that trust and just getting them to turn to them. But they don't. These predators don't just groom the child; they groom the families and they groom the community as well. So when I went in to talk to the principal the first time after I overheard that conversation, I told him that I think we have a problem and gave him a stack of my cell phone bill of the text messages, the phone numbers back and forth. And he sat back in his chair and just let out a huge sigh. And he said, I just gave him a teacher's award 2 weeks ago. So he too, and the rest of the school was also groomed by this guy. And he knew immediately right away when he saw the number of text messages that there was something clearly not right. And initially, both denied any wrongdoing. And most boys don't want to come forward when something like this happens. So that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind. This doesn't just happen to girls. And my son is 32 now, and he said that he would have never told me had I not overheard that conversation. So I think it's important for people to realize that boys are less willing to come forward. So there's actually an organization, it's called 1in6.org. You can go on their website and it talks about men and boys who have been groomed and or molested, and that at least 1 in 6 boys before the age of 18 will be sexually molested or abused, where in females it's usually 1 in 4. So
Wow. And
yeah,
with the way we have and with the way that things are going with the predators, unfortunately, it's scary to even think it goes up high, will go higher than that. You know,
right.
um, Michelle, one of the things that I mentioned this morning when I was advertising our space and a couple of the other spaces, and you yourself, we've met personally face to face a few times on the circuit of educating against counter trafficking and the grooming. And I made it a point to tell people in those spaces this morning, we need them to realize, and Lisa, our lead investigator, said, please, definitely make sure people are aware that this is actually where that a lot of that starts, right? A lot of your trafficking guys as well. You're not. This is not 1986. This is 2026. Typically, you're not going to find someone or your child snatched per se, literally grabbed off the street. It's done in your home through these devices, and that's where the grooming starts, right? So a lot of these situations do end up in trafficking. And I think it's very important for people to understand that because a lot of times we file these things away like in different folders in our head, right? But that actually is where a lot of that trafficking starts. I just wanted to point that out as well. So when it comes to the bill and the law that this, unfortunately, the story inspired you to look into, Michelle, how did that come about and what does that actually do? The way you have it written, what does that actually do for a state?
So in Illinois, back when this happened, so this whole thing transpired over 3 years. So it took us 3 years to get this guy convicted. And my biggest battle was not at the school. My biggest battle was actually at the state's attorney's office. And the school was behind us 100% and was actually probably the linchpin in the entire thing. But I had nothing to do with the grooming bill in Illinois other than we used it for our conviction. So we tried to get this guy, like I said, convicted over 3 years. we got in a new state's attorney in January of 2013, and he started working our case. And he said that, we probably have to take a plea deal at this point, that um, this case has just been hanging out there for way too long. They're going to say that he can't remember everything. There's lots of gaps in the transcripts because there were over 6,000 messages, but there were gaps in the transcripts. Now, to be clear, the gaps in the transcripts did not include what was said by my son. So everything that was said in that interview, where he offered him money, he wanted to make a sex video, he would also refer to his body part as my little guy. Am I ever going to get to see the little guy? This sort of thing. All of that was there in the text messages. So while there were gaps, all of that was still there. So those were not left out. And I was livid. And I said, we've been working so hard to try to get this guy convicted. And now we're going to have to take a plea deal. And so we go to court in August of 2013. At this point, my son is 19 years old, had finished his freshman year of college. And when he started texting him, it was between his sophomore and junior year in high school. And we go to court, and the teacher decides he wants to take this to trial and doesn't want to take the plea bargain. Now, from my understanding, that is very, very rare that ever happens. And people they were shocked. The attorneys on our side were shocked. The judge was shocked, and the judge was ticked, actually, because he said, "You have dragged this family out for 2.5 years. We could have gone to trial this summer while this young man was home from college, and now we have to bring him back in the middle of the semester because their next trial date wasn't until October." But I believe that everything happens for a reason. There are no coincidences, and God's hand was all over this, because we left that courthouse, went and had a meeting with the state's attorney's office and his first assist. And he said there's a new law that just came into play in Illinois just last month that became effective. So in July of 2013, became effective, and it was a grooming law. He said everything that happened to your son, to this community, and to your family is in that law, but there's no precedent set. He said that this is the only law like this in the country. And um, he didn't know if if they were going to be able to get it, because it's a lot of work to get the first precedent setting case. So we go to court in October of 2013 and get the very first unlawful grooming conviction in the United States, as well as solicitation of a minor. He then went back to court and appealed and got the solicitation of a minor taken off. But we have the very first, and now to date, the only standalone grooming conviction in the United States, meaning that there were no other charges that he was convicted of, just the grooming. And um, at that point, I was just kind of concerned about my son. So I wasn't really doing any advocacy work or anything. I didn't even know what grooming was really, until that came into play, and just like everybody else, so you have like normal grooming of somebody to be of good moral character. You groom someone to be the CEO of a company, but this is unlawful grooming, whereby somebody's trying to entice, of course, a child, even, with manipulative behavior, communication, or activities. And the intent of that is to physically or psychologically harm another individual. And so that's what grooming, unlawful grooming is. And so it took some time for me to really understand what all of that was. And my son then went back to school and was not doing well. He was kind of out of control, was drinking a lot, was pretty belligerent with anybody in authority, for obvious reasons, and hadn't really dealt with everything. I had him in counseling all through high school, like when this first started. But my son's pretty smart, didn't want to be in counseling, and so told the counselor everything that he wanted to hear or needed to hear for him to discharge him. And so that's exactly what happened. So, and this teacher, out of all of that, did 30 days in jail, had to register as a sex offender for only 10 years, and could never teach again, and paid like a $2,700 fine. So, what people need to understand, though, with grooming is, they're like, well, it's no big deal. He didn't touch your kid. So, in the conviction on the very first page at the very bottom, it states on there that this teacher offered my son money to put his mouth on his penis. That is the end game of grooming. So I found out later from a trafficking investigator, she said that had he gotten his hands on my son, he wouldn't have kept him for himself. He would have trafficked him. And that was a gut punch for me, because I never even thought about that. That never even crossed my mind. So those are just some things that people need to be aware of too. And making sure that parents are having the difficult conversations with their kids. When I was trying to get him to come forward. He really didn't want to, obviously. I mean, this is a lot for any child, let alone a 16-year-old boy. And I just told him one night, I said, this is no longer about you. This is about the kids across the street and the kids down the street. And if something happens to one of them, how do you face their parents knowing you could have done something about it? And then proceeded to have a talk with him about suicide. I wanted him to know that nothing would ever be worth taking his life over and that it would crush me if he ever did anything like that. So those conversations have to be had with these kids because they're so vulnerable. And it's up to us to make sure that they're the ones, that are at the forefront of everything you're doing and making sure that they know that you have their back 100%. So that's kind of the crux of the whole story. I mean, there's a lot more there. People can go to my website to find out more about the actual story itself. But I think really why I'm here tonight is to kind of let you know all of the good stuff that's coming out of this. But if you guys have any questions, first of all, about the story, I'm willing to take questions on that.
Yeah, guys, definitely. If you've been in this space before and you know us, you definitely can have a mic. If we don't know you, your profile will be vetted, but please do grab a mic, ask questions. But I definitely want to roll over, like she's saying, to the part that is the good stuff on this, what has come of this, and so that we can make sure everybody's got those grooming laws in their state. I do see Matt has his hand up, so we'll go over to Matt first. How are you doing this evening, Matt? Good to be back in our space again.
Oh my gosh. It is so good to be back with you, my friend. First of all, before I say anything else. But and it's so good to see all these amazing people in here. Uh okay. So Michelle, one thing I thought of, because I don't know that I've asked you this before. Um what what makes a groomer? Meaning, in this particular case, as it relates to this teacher, what would make him, or what could have made him want to do what he did to your son?
Well, I think a lot of times, with even sexual abuse cases with kids, it's somebody who has had this happen to them themselves, right? So he might have been abused himself. So I don't know for sure what it was with him. I do know that both of his parents died when he was younger, lived with his grandparents for a while. So, I mean, it could have been just childhood trauma. Who knows what it is? I think that's the other thing is through all of this, I've kind of grown and understood that, man, this guy had probably had a lot of issues growing up and there was nobody there to fight for him. So making sure that we're praying for these folks too, these predators, I think that's one of the biggest things is everyone's a child of God and we all need to try to get as many people to the kingdom as we can. And so I will pray for him. And if he can't be reformed, then I just need God to get him out of the way. So that's kind of how my brain works. So we just need people to get out of the way to make sure that we can get things pushed forward. But I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened to him when he was younger. And I've kind of changed my feelings on a lot of things. I said at the time when this happened, in an interview, I said, one day I will forgive him, but today is not that day. And that was the day that he was convicted. But I do feel like I've forgiven him, partially because so much good has come out of this and because my son wasn't harmed, right? But at least not physically harmed. There's a lot of mental things that have played into this over the years. And I think he's finally at a point where he's really doing well. But people need to understand that they don't have to touch these kids for them to have a profound, long lasting effect on their lives.
Absolutely. The grooming does not have to be physical. It all starts mentally, that's for sure. And people don't realize that. You would hope and pray that law enforcement and, the DAs and so forth would understand. But a lot of this has really came full circle with devices, right? And in the electronics, I mean, they they advance so quickly that before we know it, I mean, I just had, not going to get on that story, but I just had to go get a new phone. And I'm asking them, so when does the next one come out? Oh, in 2 months. Like it goes so fast that if you don't keep up with it as a parent or a guardian, like the kids are going to know exactly how to work these things. And before you know it, what has occurred. And that, and you're talking about a mom that was involved as well, right? So we've got to be proactive on all these things. And I again want to thank you for coming in to share this, guys. And but by the end of the space, if I don't come back to it, we do need to talk about, let me just say this real quick and then I'll get out of the way. We recommend Bark. I don't know if Michelle actually has anything else to recommend to us. If anyone else does that has used some type of device protection, please do come up and share it with us. But as far as I know, Bark has been the one that the organizations, different organizations have still been recommending that will alert you for many different things. I encourage you to look into that before you give your child a device. They have routers, watches, phones, a couple different things. So you can definitely like kind of deck your house out with Bark if you needed to.
Yeah.
Michelle, do you want to say something before we go to hands? I see we got 3 hands.
Just about bark. So that's actually how the Montana law came to be. So I have a cousin who's much younger than I am, and she was in the Navy at the time when all this was happening and wasn't married, didn't have children at the time. But then after she got out and started having kids, and then she heard me, I had shared a podcast with her and she heard me talk about Bark. So she bought one for her 13-year-old daughter, a Bark phone, because they have smartphones. So she bought her a smartphone. And the nice thing about Bark is you can lock it down so they can talk to just parents, they can talk to just siblings, to parents and grandparents, certain friends. And she was, and you could also like decide which apps they can have on their phone. So she allowed her to have Snapchat with some of her friends, and it wasn't 2 weeks later that she started getting messages on her phone that there was something not right during Snapchat, and she was getting messages from somebody. And her daughter was mad at her because she felt like she was invading her privacy. And she told her that these messages didn't seem right, and the daughter kept maintaining that it was, a 14-year-old kid and he was interested in her. And so I told her to take it to her local police department, and she did. And they told her essentially she just needed to be a better parent. Same thing happened when she took it to the sheriff. I said, take it to your local FBI. Well, that guy had been trained by ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. He ran the device and found that it was actually 2 people from Iowa that were messaging her. One was um, a 14-year-old kid, but they weren't sure if it was the kid or if it was the dad at the house. So sometimes they work in tandem too. So people need to understand that sometimes the parents will entice the kids to do some of this grooming in order for them to go get that person. And so you just need to understand that that does happen as well. So we don't know if that was the case when this happened, but she then went to the school. I said, get your Chromebook from them, see if he's been messaging her on Chromebook, because school had just ended. I said, make sure they don't wipe it until you get a look at it. And sure enough, he had gotten through their firewall and was messaging her on the Chromebook as well. So she talked the school into getting Bark on all of their devices after this happened, and found a rep in Montana to sponsor the Montana grooming bill. And it was because of her and the information that I was feeding her that the Montana bill went through. And it was her boyfriend's cousin who was a Democrat rep. And she said, yes, she'll take it and run with it, but she wasn't on the right committee. So she turned it over across the aisle to a Republican who was on the correct committee. And they got their grooming bill to go through unanimously on both sides of the aisle in the House and the Senate. And they have probably the bill or the law now that is model legislation, or at least should be model legislation for the entire country. Anybody who grooms a child over the age of 18 and grooms a child who is 13 years of age or younger, it's 100 years in prison, no chance of parole for the first 25, and it's a lifelong satellite surveillance after that. But if it's a child who is 16 years of age to 14 years of age, then it could be 4 to 100 years. Again, same thing applies. If they do get paroled, it's a lifelong satellite surveillance after that. Um, the problem with a lot of these states and these laws, same with Montana, is they'll use the age of consent, right? So the age of consent for sex is 16, but however, if a 16-year-old still has sex with a 24-year-old, it's still statutory rape. It makes no sense to me that that's what they're doing. So we're trying to get some of those things changed as well. Every child should be defined as anybody under the age of 18. And a lot of states are doing it that way, but there are some that just need some work and some tweaking. But if we can get them, like in every other criminal code, they define a child as anybody under 18 except when it came to grooming. But so we're working on that. But yeah, I do recommend Bark, and all full transparency on my website. I do have a Bark affiliate link, which means that if somebody buys Bark through that link, I do get some money from that to help fund what I'm doing. So
Awesome. I didn't even know that.
yeah.
Sweet. All right. We all know what to do. If y'all need bark, you go to Michelle's website. And I did put Michelle's website up top. And I also put what was the other one? The other one was the interview that or the actual, I can't even think right now, the broadcast of the news that I played at the beginning of the space. There we go. And then I also put up an interview that Allie Hopper did on Mel K. And I put this up there, guys, because I pulled out a statement of her interview, and you can go watch the full interview, but it's very important you hear from different people saying what I said. Most cases of trafficking start with grooming. And it's very important for everybody to understand because, good grief, I mean, people really don't understand what grooming is. So we really need to get back to the basics, as we've said before. And Michelle, oh, she's gone. Okay. Well, I was fixing Michelle Smith. If you have any questions, please ask us. So I guess she don't. But what I want to ask you, Michelle, real quick before we go to the next hand was this. So what you just shared about the lifetime surveillance and those details, is that actually the grooming bill that you do recommend that the states that people do try to get into their states is the one that you were talking about? I want to be specific because I want to make sure everybody knows what can they do to get the grooming bill that you do think needs to be recommended in their state.
So yeah, so the way that I set my website up is at the tabs at the top, you have current grooming laws. I still have to add some from this year yet. We haven't done that yet, but they can go on there and look at the current grooming laws. I have them listed in there in the way that they went down. So like the first bill to the last, or the first law to the last law. But you can go in there and click on a Legiscan for any law. It'll take you right to the Legiscan so you can print it right from there. So it's all like right at your fingertips. One of the things that I did is we tried to get a federal grooming law put in place. There is a federal grooming law, but it's an adjunct charge. So you have to be charged with something else to be charged with grooming. So I've been working with a representative out of Indiana named Erin Houchin, and she said that she'd be willing to sponsor the bill. It's sitting in legal still, has been for quite some time. But one of the things that I did is I took the best of a lot of different laws. So I took the Montana law as like my main um, framework, and then took the best of other laws. And then there's some things that aren't in these laws that I put in there. So there was a case that you guys had in Texas, remember? And that girl was having some mental issues, even though she was 18. And so she was moving, like they went and picked her up from Texas. They moved her up to Illinois. And the parents were trying to get control over her, even though she had just turned 18 because she wasn't on her meds and left with this person who had been grooming her when she was a minor. So they waited until she was 18, went down and got her, and then started transporting her back to Illinois. So one of the provisions I put in the federal law was that if they groom any child who has any sort of mental, or not even just a child, but any person who has some sort of mental disability or decreased mental capacity for any reason, autism or schizophrenia, whatever it is, that would be included in there, that there is no age limitation. So I did put that in there as well. But so people could go there, and if they go onto the tab that's called Andrew's Law, click on the federal bill draft, and it has the bill draft that I did for the federal level. They could use that for their state. So what I try to do is get somebody who knows a rep or a senator in their state, knows them well, like somebody they can call at any time, or that they could text and say, hey, I have a new bill I'd like you to sponsor. You can go onto my website. There's a contact page on there, and you can contact me through there. That goes directly to my personal email. And then I will get back to you and have you connect me with that rep or senator. We will help them write the law for their state. And we'll also, I will come and testify if I need to, like in a congressional or a senatorial committee hearing. whatever is needed to get that law to pass. So that's why I have the affiliate link, and the donate button is because I travel to go and do this to try to help out so we can get these laws passed in all 50 states.
Again, thank you, thank you, thank you for all the work you're
Hmm.
doing. And guys, y'all hear it. We have no excuse. No excuse. This woman has done the footwork. There is a website that literally tells us what we need to do. I mean, the information's there. So definitely connect with people. Co-host, I am so bad. I see three hands. I have no idea. I see Marquis and Miss Liz are the ladies, and I know Christian's going to make them go first anyway. So, ladies, whoever was first, I do trust both of you. Just go right ahead. How are you? I'm so excited y'all are here.
You can go
And
ahead,
both of them,
Liz. I'll
there you go. I was fixed to say both of you are ladies and don't want to unmic. You just go, Marquis.
Okay. Thank you, Brandy. It's good to see you and Misty and Kim. And Michelle, I've enjoyed listening to your story. I hope that my question is not a duplicate of what you were just explaining. So if it is, my phone rang and I sort of got distracted a second. But I'm very active with the Tennessee state legislature. And we just had a bill that was put into effect July 1. Do you know or have you had a chance to look at that bill? Or did you have any work? Did you do any work on that bill? Do you know where it comes into comparison with the law that you recommend? Or is that asking for me to ask you a whole lot that should not be at the top of your head?
Did you say this was Texas?
Tennessee.
Tennessee. Oh, yeah. I had a lot to do with the Tennessee bill. So, Hope Beryl Green, who was on Spaces last week with Matt, she lives in Tennessee, and we were speaking at an event in California last year. And then I had her at my church when we had an anti trafficking event last fall. And we were talking about the grooming bills, and she heard my story. And she's so then she gets a hold of me a couple months later and said, "Hey, I have somebody that connected me with Senator Bowling out of Tennessee." Senator Bowling is a bulldog, man. I love that woman. So anyway, she gets a hold of us, Senator Bowling does, and said, "Hey, can you guys come and meet with me?" Now, this is the only state that I've ever had this happen in. And she met with us for 90 minutes in her office, asked us every question she possibly could. She wanted to know everything that happened to Hope. And there were things that she had heard about that she wasn't sure if it was true. And Hope verified a lot of things for her. And then she listened to my story. And the Tennessee law is really a really strong law. Um, One of the things that I wish we would have put in there was about the mental capacity. So we'll work on an amendment for that for next year. I'll tell you how good Senator Bowling is. So when I read the bill that they were putting through initially, I gave her everything that she needed. I gave her my website, told her which bills to kind of take things from. And she, defined a child as anybody under the age of 18. She did all the right things. But I was reading it a couple days before it was supposed to go to committee hearing. I said, "Hey, you guys need to put an amendment in here before it goes to committee hearing because you didn't put anything in here for provision for the sex offender registry. So if somebody's guilty of grooming, that they need to register as a sex offender for life." And she's like, "I'm on it. I'll do it right now." I emailed her, and like literally 5 minutes later, she emails me back and said, "I'm on it." So she puts the amendment through, and it did go through. So the entire bill went through, became law just a few months ago. So yeah, I was very active in that. I went down to testify in a congressional committee hearing, and there were so many bills that day that they didn't get to our bill. So I went all the way down there to Tennessee. I live in Chicago area and never even got to testify. But Hope read my testimony the following week for me and did a fantastic job. So, yeah, I had a lot to do with the Tennessee bill, which is awesome. You guys have a good group of people down there.
Thank you, Michelle. Typically, we are very fortunate because our legislators, especially the females, and I'm not being sexist, but they really put a lot of work in because they have to make sure they get the bills passed. If they don't have the information behind them, then
Right.
they're going to push them around. So thank you very much. I just wanted to double check. I knew we'd passed the bill and I just wasn't sure what role you had played. So thank you for all your help and all your work.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that question, Marquis. And that's cool. So at least we know Tennessee is covered. All right, that's the goal too, guys. We're gonna go over to Miss Liz next, but that's the goal. If you don't have a grooming bill, we need to make sure that you get to your legislature and you make sure there is one. So I'm glad to hear Tennessee has one. Go ahead, Miss Liz. How are you tonight? And thank you for coming
I'm
in and joining us.
I'm good. I'm sorry I was late. I had some important phone calls, and so I kind of got tied up. But I have a couple questions for Michelle. The bark thing. My daughter just got my granddaughter her first phone. Can you? Is this application um something that you could add to a phone that's pre-existing, or do you have to get it through them?
So yes, they have a Bark app as well. So you can just get the app. And this is the nice thing is you can get messages in and out of your child's phone. Anything that is texted to them or anything they text out will come directly to your phone. You can get every single message, or you can set it up so you just have certain keywords. So like body parts, cuss words, emojis, that kind of thing. So if those
Okay.
things are being texted, then that could come to you. So it doesn't have to be every single text message that goes in and out, like, hey, your hair looks nice today, those kinds of things. But yeah.
Okay. Are these laws also inclusive to gaming devices? Because a lot of gamers are being groomed. A lot of it's happening there. Parents don't even realize.
So yes, these would fall into grooming for sure. But then there's also other separate laws that people are working on that specifically have to do with gaming. And that's the thing. We talked about that a little bit before you came on, but not a lot. But yes, parents need to be very vigilant on their kids' devices and what they're doing and have the conversation with your kid. I don't care if they roll their eyes at you 50,000 times. Say it to them until you're blue in the face. I mean, it takes most people 7 times to understand something or understand a story. So if you have to tell them 15 or 20 times, it doesn't matter. Make sure that they understand how important it is that they don't give out any personal information. They don't even have to give their age out, right? And don't certainly don't tell them what school they go to or what town they live in. All of those discussions need to be had. And then also making sure that the kids know that if something does happen, that you are a safe space. You won't judge them. You won't make them feel bad because that's when they're not going to come to you and then something bad is going to happen. So just let them know, sometimes people make mistakes. And if you make a mistake, you can come to me and I will not judge you. I will not yell at you. I will make sure that the problem is taken care of because I love you and I will love you through it. That's the biggest thing that people need to understand.
Okay, my other thing is I did go to your website, and I
Mhm.
have a gentleman that I know very, very personally, who's our one of our house members, and I want to talk to him. I'm in Virginia, and I want to talk to him about our grooming. And he's got 5 daughters, one of which is severely handicapped. And I want to get with him and get him this information because if we don't have them, we need them. I don't
Yeah,
think
you
there's
guys
a.
do have one, but it's not great. I looked at it
Okay.
a couple years ago, so I don't know if they've made any amendments to it or not.
Well, I'll give him
Um,
a call and find out. So,
yeah,
but the other thing I noticed is on your website, you have a young Marine there. Is that your son?
yeah, that is my son. I see that you are a Marine as well.
Yeah,
Um,
tell him Semper Fi. Yeah, that's wonderful. You
yeah.
got to be a pretty strong person, and God bless this young man that he's been through this. And that was what I was going to ask: is how is he doing now with the repercussions? Because I mean, this got to take a mental toll on him too.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he's doing much better now. He so ever since 9/11 happened, he was all in on becoming a United States Marine. My brother is a retired Lieutenant Colonel in the Marine Corps and was a pilot, and he took us to go see all the planes, right, and all the flying things that the Marine Corps has. And at 7 years old, my son was hooked, and he put him in a flight simulator. And because the kids are so good at gaming, my son landed this helicopter, he said, better than most pilots. And so my son was hooked. And so he wanted to enlist going right out of high school. And the reason he wanted to enlist is because he wanted to be a linguist for the Marine Corps. And you can't do that if you go in as an officer. So he wanted to enlist, didn't want to go to college. But then when all of this happened, that put all of that on the back burner. So he was really upset about that. He was upset that this teacher, ruined the last few years of his high school career. Like there were a lot of things going on mentally for him. And then, my husband, who is not his dad, like didn't understand all of this stuff. And he's like, why did you answer him? Why did you text him back? So kind of putting the blame on him. I'm like, hey, stop blaming him. It's not his fault. You know what I mean? This teacher's in a position of authority and he felt like he needed to answer him back. So there's all of this stuff going on in the background. And then he went into the Marine Corps after he'd finished 2.5 years of college. And hadn't really dealt with everything yet and came back from deployment and got in a little bit of trouble, got NJP'd. It wasn't that big of a deal, but he ended up going to a counselor in the Marine Corps who saw right through him because my son is very, very intelligent. He was a Russian and Spanish linguist for the Marines and did intelligence for them. So
I know
she got
exactly
a
what he did because I was in that field, so
yeah,
I
so she got a
understand.
hold of him and she's like, you're probably one of the smartest people I've ever worked with, but you're not giving me the honest truth. And she made him really dig in and work through things. So it was actually a blessing in disguise. And, he still has had issues on and off, but it's much better now. We've gone to counseling again with him as an adult and me as a parent of an adult that has gone through this. Because when I started talking about all of this again in 2023, he was getting triggered and he was mad at me. He's like, "Why are you doing this?" He's like, "You already saved me." And he was 29 years old at the time. "Why are you doing this? You already saved me." I looked at him and said, "Okay, Satan." And he looked at me and he's like, "What?" I said, "What better way would Satan like me to stop saving other children than to use the person I love the most to do it?" And he's like, "Okay." And I said, "Remember, this is not about you. This is about the next kid at this point. And this has been put on my heart. This is something I feel that I need to do. If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to talk about any of it. And if you have questions or want to ask something, you can." I know that he pays attention because he makes comments about something that's on my website that there's no way he would have known had he not seen my website. So he's paying attention. He does ask questions here and there. And the best part of this is when Indiana was putting their grooming law through this last year. Um, they were defining a child as anybody under the age of 14. So they were leaving this huge gap between 14 and 18-year-olds wide open. And those are the ones who are usually typically targeted the most for trafficking. And he is now a resident of Indiana, and he actually testified with me in a congressional committee hearing. And
That's
I never thought that he
outstanding.
would ever do that. So,
That's outstanding. That is just outstanding. Tell him I said Semper Fi, brother. And
yes, it will. Thank you for
uh,
your service too.
oh, it was an honor and a privilege. Believe me, my father was 32 years in the Marine Corps, so I can relate to that lieutenant colonel. And
Yeah.
I was in for a short time because my husband and I were in two different countries most of my tour, and we were better off that way as it turned out. But thank you for all you do, and I do
Yes.
appreciate it. And
Thank
do
you.
you and you do take donations? I would assume.
I do. You can go through my website or if you DM me, I'll send you my number. Because if you go through like Zelle or Venmo, something like that, then they don't take any fees, right? So if
Okay.
you wanted to DM me though, I can give you my information so you can do it that way if you
Okay.
like. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of money because I'm a disabled veteran, but
Listen, every little bit helps.
yeah,
So,
exactly. This is a cause dear to my heart. So,
yes, thank you
and
so
there's this
much.
room to be wall to wall parents and grandparents, and it really should be. And I don't
Right.
understand why people aren't you know paying attention. I really
Yeah.
don't understand that. But thank you so
Well,
much. I really do
it's
appreciate
done
it.
by design though, right? They try to keep us as busy as possible so you can't pay attention to what's going on. So a lot of it's done by design.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And Brandy, as always, love you, my friend, and thank you for doing this.
I love you too. And thank you so much for joining us and everything you do and your support. It's so important that everybody get in here, like you said. And my first thought I want to say real quick is, most people, of course, who wouldn't like to just be hanging out and talking about fun stuff, right? Everybody would. But unfortunately, I think that's what got us here.
Right.
Looking for, right, just the let's pay attention to all the happy and pretend that's not happening, and that got us here. So no, you're right, Miss Liz. We should have a couple hundred in here, but eventually, hopefully people will realize, and hopefully their child won't be harmed before they realize that we do need everybody involved, every single person, whether they have children or not, because so many don't have kids but they have the eye and they can watch out for those kids in their community. And that's exactly why we do this. So thank you so much for coming in. All right, let's go over to Christian. It's so good to see you, sir. And then we'll go back to Marquis. How are you, Christian?
Well, it's always a good thing, Brandy, when you have a space going. And Michelle, thank you for not just sharing your testimony and your thoughts, and that the work that you're doing it's incomparable. You guys all do such a good job. Thank you, Miss, for also hosting, and Kim. I actually wanted to bring this because this is something I know. Michelle, your son was dealing with a teacher. And I know those are very difficult and they're in a position of power, but I also know statistics are pretty high when it comes to positions of power, when it comes to things like school counselors. So, what thoughts did you have when addressing positions of power with these laws? And because I know that's very important because we got to protect our kids from people that are in a position of power and influence. And teachers are one of them, school counselors, principals, bus drivers, people that have authority over our kids 24/7, basically, when we're not with them at school. So, what's your thoughts
Right.
on that?
Right. So, in the Wisconsin law that just went through this year too, they have enhanced penalties for people who are in positions of authority over these kids. So that's something else that could be done too. What I find ironic though is when I sit there and think about it, I'm like, doesn't every adult have a position of authority over children? Right. But I get what you're saying. Like these are people that they have to answer to that aren't necessarily friends, but or family. But I feel like how come we can't just take the penalty that's the highest in a grooming case? Because we know what the end game really was. So don't worry about enhancing penalties. Just make it the same across the board because they're all in a position of power and give them all the highest penalty felony charge that they can. That's how I feel about it. But I do get what you're saying because this was a teacher. I mean, there were times where there were like 10, 15, 20 messages coming in and my son wouldn't answer them back. And then at some point he felt like he had to because he was his baseball coach, right? So that's the thing. And if this wasn't somebody who was a baseball coach or in a position of power, he would have just ignored him.
I agree. And see what my concern is, and I know that this is yours and Brandy's, probably a lot of people who understand this, is even if they're a teacher, but not necessarily your kid's teacher, but they are a coach, there's so much influence, so much, they can do because they hold it over the kids because if they don't do something, they can kick them off the team. They can, do whatever. And that's where the problem really lies. They have more
Right.
power when they're actually over some type of sporting, event. It could be gymnastics, could be anything, weightlifting, whatever. Those that influence, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to kick you off the team, and that really mentally devastates every kid.
Right. And the thing with this teacher, and he didn't, like I said, he wasn't in his classroom, but he was a baseball coach. This guy, so he was like, I always think about Criminal Minds, that show Criminal Minds, because he was like the perfect unsub, right? He had lost his parents at a younger age, was raised by his grandparents. He coached a sport that he'd never played. He was teaching a shop class, which most of his kids are going to be boys. So he was like the perfect unsub. He volunteered for everything at the school. Everyone thought that he was this great guy because he was volunteering for everything. Um, but he wasn't a head coach or anything, so he had no authority over, like, whether my son was gonna play or not, and he was actually a coach of a freshman team. My son was a sophomore at the time, so he wasn't even his actual current coach when he started texting him. But, yeah, I mean, when you're in a position of authority, you have that ability to hold that over that kid, but here's what the parents really need to do, and they need to do this from a very young age, is that you can trust me for anything. If anybody ever tells you to keep something a secret, it's not good. Um, there should never be any secrets between you and me when another adult is involved. I will always trust you. I will always have your back. I will love you through anything. Those are the messaging that has to come through from the time that the kids can understand this, from 3, 4 years old on. And if they know that, they're never going to break that bond with you, I don't think. And I think that was like the part that I was missing with my kid. I was a single parent for a long time. I never for one second thought that he would never tell me something. But he honestly thought that if he told me this, that I would kill this guy. And um, the thing is that, like, I'm smarter than that. Like, I did everything the right way, even though it took a long time. The wheels of justice roll slow, but they usually roll true. So I had to kind of just wait it out. I mean, we see that now with a lot of stuff that's going on, right, in our elections. So just takes a long time for things to go, but they do find the real true because the truth comes out. So I think that's where I was missing that part with my son. And I wish that I would have taken his phone away from him at night because no kid needs their phone after 9 o'clock at night. So there were some mistakes that I made for sure. The one thing that I did is when I overheard that conversation, as I acted, I knew that there a gut feeling. So that's the other thing is if anybody has sort of a gut feeling that something is wrong, it probably is. So go with that.
Man, I'm gonna drop Brandy. I'm gonna have to leave the space for a little bit. But Michelle, there was one other thing. You guys are talking about Bark, which is a very top notch app, and it's if you can't get the phone and all that, but you can get the app. That's a great start. But what I've actually found, and I've recommended this to some older gentlemen, people that are adults, if you had a problem with, like, say, for example, pornography, get Covenant Eyes. There's nothing wrong with teaming up Bark with Covenant Eyes because you can get all details on all things from both those apps combined. And they talk about gaming. Well, one thing I do know about Covenant Eyes is it actually will alert every conversation for kids when they're in gaming apps. So it's a benefit to, like, piggyback some of those things. Um, Not everything's always going to be perfect, but Bark is actually one of the best out there. And Covenant Eyes, just piggybacking that, will also give it. It basically pushes everything that someone on a phone gets to whoever their accountability partner is. So you see everything. It just mirrors it. So a parent can have complete control on seeing what's going on. So that's what I do like about that app.
Yeah, I've never heard of that app, so I'll have to look into it. Thank
And
you.
what was it called again, Christian?
Covenant Eyes. It's actually an app that was originally developed for Christians, for accountability, and they've actually developed their adult kid watch. So that's actually been improving over the last, I don't know, 15 years. But it's something that they've now developed a new protection for kids, that everything that they get, any messages and stuff, if there's anything flagged, it will go to whoever the accountability partner is. And usually that's probably the parent, and they would know if they're, like, on their Xbox. You can get it on things like Xbox, things on, PlayStation. You can get it on your phones, you can get it on your computers, you can get it on your laptop, and it will just go to whoever the accountability partner is, and they will be able to see everything. So if they get a photo from an adult and they're a minor, it'll flag, and the accountability partner will know what they got. Like, if they got a nude photo or whatever, they'll know. So it's a good program, but Bark is actually one of the best. But if you actually piggyback the two of them, you have more power as a parent. So
Yeah,
Thank you
that
for
looks really
sharing all
good.
that. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for joining us tonight for sure. And guys, before we go over to the next two hands, just make sure you know as well that you can share these spaces off of the X platform. You can put them in text messages, you can put them in other chat rooms like Messenger. So people do not have to have an X profile to actually replay these spaces. So that's what I really like about it as well. You can just send this to anyone and they can get educated as well. That's very, very important. All right, let's go over to our new speaker, if you're okay with that, real quick, Marquis. We haven't heard from this new speaker, and I hope I hope someone knows you. Never married dating. How are you tonight?
Hi, Brandy. I'm listening to all space, and I appreciate the work you're doing with children and families. I also had a quick thing about we're helping. I'm a social media coordinator with a pretty big law firm, and right now we're dealing with the social media addiction aspect for our children and our families. It's pretty dramatic when people are, it's just horrible. And you all may have heard about the case in Florida. Just finished out a 15-year-old in Florida was just awarded $6 million for a social media addiction case. It must have been pretty bad. I had to read the court case documents, but there's a lot of folks that have children and they don't know what to do. They need help to get justice from these social media platforms. And attorneys at the law office, there's about 5 to 10 of them, And we're trying to get over 100 folks signed up to join the social media addiction platform lawsuit. It's a massive action. This is massive action, one-on-one with the attorney. So if you know anybody that's saying, I don't know what to do with my kids, they need help, they need mental help, they need help with these social media platforms, like I don't know how to get them off the phone, what am I going to do? Well, you're going to get on the lawsuit. Send me a DM. I'll get you signed up with the social media massive action.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I do have to say, just to protect Shepherd's Watch, that I do not know this gentleman, but I absolutely know that it is a problem. Okay. I know that there is class action lawsuits going on right now for this problem right here that he's talking about. And I do know people, and I know some young adults who absolutely are struggling with that. So, guys, pay attention to that. If you're and I do have a question for you before we go over to the next hand, because I've wondered this myself when I see that they have lawsuits going on, because I do believe 100%. I know that they have proven that things were manipulated, right, to get people addicted and our children as well. Do they have to? This is my one question for you before we go to the next hand. If someone wants to take part in those lawsuits, do they have to have a diagnosis of some sort for them to be a part of that? Because I have seen some people talk about that. Go ahead.
Yes, they don't have to have it currently. They can be willing to go to either a doctor or a mental health person and get a diagnosis, either body shaming, anxiety, depression, sleep problems, some kind of disorder. And once they have that disorder from a doctor or a mental health technician or a psychiatrist or psychologist, then they're all set and they can join the lawsuit. That's one of the things. They have to have been 17, a minor, when they join a social media platform. And number two, have a diagnosis from a doctor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
Thank you for that. And I do have a second, but I promise this is the
Doesn't
last
have to
one.
be the psychiatrist or doctor does not have to say that it's social media. They don't have to say it. All I have to say is they have some kind of difficulty with life, mental problem, trouble sleeping.
Right. Okay.
It's just something like that. Because most
Gotcha.
doctors and people won't say it's social media's fault. They won't say that. So that's not a requirement that it's social media fault. So as long as they have a problem,
Okay.
that's all they need.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because we are about protecting the children. So you definitely came to the right spot to share that. And I'm glad you did, because I have been forgetting to share that there are
I
lawsuits
dropped
out there.
a video
But
about it. It's about the
well,
4-second
definitely,
range.
if someone does reach out to you, please share it. But I do have the bubble turned off to make sure that we do stay on topic in here, so you won't be able to put anything down there. But definitely share that to anyone that does reach out to you. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you
in
so
and
much,
sharing
Brandy.
that.
Thank you. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
All right, go ahead, Marquis.
I am so sorry. I forgot to ask Michelle this a while ago. Michelle, are you familiar with? There's two different legislative conferences that meet annually. One is called ALEC, it's the American Legislative Exchange Conference. The other is NCSL, which is the National Conference of State Legislators. Are you aware of either one of those groups by any chance?
No.
Okay, NCSL is meeting in Chicago
When?
at the end of the month. So I don't know who's going from Tennessee. It wouldn't hurt to reach out to Senator Bowling. Typically, Alec is more conservative, but the legislators often go to both. Um, Alec is in Orlando, I think the beginning of next week, and then at the end of the week is when NCSL is. But when I looked it up and saw it was in Chicago, I thought maybe they could get you in somewhere. But the main thing is to get you on the docket for next year, where you can really do presentations and stuff to some of these various legislative groups that will be there. They're very well attended. There's a lot of people. But I would reach out to either a Chicago rep or Senator Bolin or someone and see if they know anybody going to NCSL that could get you on some type of agenda.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, sorry, I forgot that. Forgot about that a while ago. So I promise I'll try to make that be my last thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will send you a message so you'll have that information. So if you don't remember it,
Okay, I actually just pulled up their stuff right now. It's
okay.
interesting because they're featured speakers here. At the one in Chicago, right? They're gonna have JB Pritzker there, um, who is our governor in Illinois. Um, and his cousin is Tom Pritzker, who is the CEO of Hyatt hotels. And he's actually in Jeffrey Epstein's black book under 13 different phone numbers. And his son is also in Jeffrey Epstein's black book under 13 different phone numbers on page 45, I believe. So,
Whoa.
Well, if you notice, I said Alec was the more conservative group.
yeah.
You've got the
But you
one
know
that's
what? This would be the group to actually go hit, because if I could get some of these Democrats to sponsor this, because that's the thing, is this should not be
no,
a
it's not me.
partisan issue. This should be a nonpartisan issue. We all have children. And we're finding out through some of these, lists and people that are in the Epstein files that this is on both sides of the aisle. So it's not just a Democrat problem, it's also a Republican problem. It's an everyday person problem. So we really, I might actually just go and see if I can go in there and start dropping off some business cards.
Also, they have some like different committees, and I can't find out yet because my person's in Alaska. But I have direct contact, and I'll be able to try to find out some of the various committees that meet because they often will have meetings outside of the conferences throughout the year. And if we can find the right committees, but the main thing is that's just going to give you a lot of exposure at one time to various legislators where you can get that legislation as you want that hallmark legislation passed everywhere.
Yes. Thank you. It's a great idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love it. These spaces are so packed with knowledge and information and everybody talking, and you just come up with more good stuff. I love it. Go ahead, Zach. Thank you so much, Zach, and thank you for sharing it out like you do. Hey guys, I also want to say there is a profile down below that says CSN on X. If you would go down there and follow, also, so our co hosts weren't even aware yet because we have not had a space since this started. But the Conservative News Network, or Conservative Space Network, sorry, we are a part of now. And so that's a profile down there. I want you to go follow. It will be in and out of the spaces that are in the network itself. So if you are following it, then you should be able to find the network spaces every day, and they're all day long. We're actually one of the last ones. Radio Face will be next, and he'll be closing out the night for the network. All right. I want to say hello to a few people that we usually don't see in here. Ultra, hello, right side. Thank you for joining. Adam, Jesse. I don't want to say everyone. I just want to say hello, Rosie and Play Nice. I love y'all, Jarbot. Amazing friends down there. So I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for your support. All right. What have we not talked about? So I do want to say you said there were 15 states that actually do have grooming laws now. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yes, and it could be actually more. So what happens is this starts to take on a life of its own, right? So other states start to glob on. So for example, last year Wyoming or Montana had their grooming law go in place. So Wyoming then put their law in place this year. So that's kind of what happened. And then Missouri put a law through this year. And I think Pennsylvania, Texas does have a grooming law. It just needs some work. Because I know you were asking about Texas. So they do have a grooming law in place. They actually amended their grooming law this year to put a sex offender registry in there because they forgot to do it when it went through in 23. And they also defined a child as anybody under the age of 18. So they did it right. But there are some things that need to be worked on in here, some of the verbiage. So there are some amendments that we could work on. But it's a class 3 felony. So 2 to 10 years in prison. So it's
Yeah,
not
we
bad.
definitely have to work on. No, we got to work on that. But you're
Yeah,
right.
well,
But we do New York.
Indiana put theirs through as first offense is just a misdemeanor. So there's
Oh
that.
my goodness. Okay, well, it does pay off that we have Michelle Smith like kind of on speed dial. So we'll definitely have to work on that for Texas. And being that I know Michelle Peterson, I hope that we're definitely going to get that done. I'm going to make sure that happens. Go ahead, Mist.
Yeah, I thanks so much for, turning your experience into a moment for people to learn and benefit. The world means a lot because who knows how many lives you've changed indirectly by stuff like this. And I did have a question. Well, I had like, I guess, a couple questions. One was from the standpoint of trying to repeat what you do. Just for clarification purposes, it sounds like our best template is kind of like if we just get to your website, the bills are there, and we can kind of present them to, even our local people. Like I talked to my county commissioner about, getting some of these bills types of bills into his hands, and just like can he get them to the people that he needs to. So is that kind of the best method of action, is just to get to your website, and then there's kind of a methodology that one could follow in order to repeat the process that you're doing?
Yes, so that's the best thing you can do. So the other thing that I've done, I mean, I was never really into politics, wasn't really a political activist, but man, I became one over the last 6 years since COVID. But you start to go to some of these meetings, right? You go to the GOP meetings, you start to learn people, you start to know people, you start to meet people, go to some of their fundraisers. Like you can go to a senator's fundraiser, your senator in your area. Um, Maybe pay what, $50 to get in for a dinner and get to know them and ask questions, and that's how you start to build relationships, and then they start to learn your trust, and then you can actually reach out to them and say, hey, I have a bill that would be great to work on. And so that's sort of what I've done. I'm fortunate enough to know that one of my state senators was a friend of mine before she ever went into politics. So I just text her, and when I come up with something or an idea, she'll try to formulate that into a bill. Like one of the things, for example, I think we should have when it comes to elections is that we have a hard time finding people to be election judges. I feel that if you're going to be an election judge, because you can't hold an election without the election judges, that should be worked. That should be something that's similar to like jury duty, right? So you all get paid for jury duty. If you take jury duty, you should get paid your regular pay at work and not have to take PTO if you're an election judge, and you can just turn your check over to the company where you work, just like you do for jury duty. So things like that, I come up with like different things and I just text her. So if you can come up with somebody that you know and build a relationship with, let them know about this, send them to my website, tell them what it really has to do about, and you can even on the very first on the homepage of my website, the lower down, there's a interview that I did with LT from And We Know. It's a very inclusive interview. It's about 50 minutes, doesn't really leave much of anything out. It's probably one of my best interviews I've done because I feel like I didn't leave anything out in that interview. And send them there and have them listen to that interview, and you can reach out to me on the contact page, and I will get in contact with that legislator, through you. It's just if I send an email to some legislator, it just goes off into the ether and I never hear back from anybody. But if somebody has a personal relationship with somebody, that's how I find that we have the best um, ability to push one of these laws through.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
then the second follow-up is a little bit less in terms of like legislation, but I think equally important, as you know. It's really important for parents to understand also like what the grooming process kind of looks like. Those of
Hmm.
us in the field who have, dealt with it and have to look at the repercussions, or have, maybe taken some more formal classes and stuff, we can kind of understand what it looks like. But for the average parent, it kind of might not look exactly like grooming, or this, we could call it. I hate to use these words, but it really is kind of what it is, a perverse seduction.
Right.
Because they are trying to seduce your kid away from you in a way, and they're also kind of grooming your kid to, break up with you in a
Yep.
way, to be prepared for your freak out and stuff. And so I just was wondering if you had any recommendations for that as well.
Yes. So also on my website, I put some education in here. So I have an education tab. The very first thing on here is what we already spoke about, is that grooming exists and is common. Predators don't just snatch kids off the street. They slowly earn trust with parents and with the child. Most grooming happens by someone the child already knows, a teacher, a coach, a family friend, or even another relative. And then steps the predators use: targeting a child, gaining trust, isolation, creating secrecy. So I cover all of that in this education. And again, I don't care if people take this and print it off. The whole idea about this is just to get the information out there. This wasn't a thing for me to make money or to, I don't monetize anything. The guy that was helping with my website was wanting to monetize everything. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just want people to be able to take this stuff and go with it. So um that's what he does. And so now he was a little frustrated with me at first. He's like, you just have a lot at the top. This isn't how most normal websites are. I'm like, I don't care. This is my website. I'm paying you to do it. So just do it how I want it. I want people to come in here and just be able to take stuff. So that's how it's set up. But you're right. People don't understand what grooming is and how it can be so tediously long and drawn out, because these people they're patient. They will build that trust and work with that family, work with that kid. So one of the things that happened here at the high school where this happened to my son, so they had a new band director, female. She was about 23 years old, 23, 24. And somebody tipped me off that there was something that was going on. They let her go in January of last year on paid administrative leave. And because I was doing so much work during COVID, the folks that are currently there kind of have a bad taste in their mouth about me, because I was going in and fighting for the kids and trying to get the masks off the kids, right? So um, went and found out from some other folks a little bit of investigating on my own, and people are telling me that she was texting some of the kids, a group of kids, and propping her door open so the kids could come in if they were late. She wouldn't write them up. All of that can be grooming, right? So she's leaving the door open. Oh my gosh, isn't she cool? So then they start to gain, she's gaining their trust. That's, she's not going to write them up. They can trust her, that type of a thing. And then I had one of my friends who doesn't live in the area. She's about an hour away from here. She did a Freedom of Information Act for me to get all the information she could about this particular situation. And she got all the FOIA, sent it to me, and this woman was also buying them blankets so they could take naps in her classroom. She was texting one kid individually, and she had talked to them about meeting up for coffee, like as a group, meeting up for coffee. What are you doing this weekend? Trying to make it sound like she's like one of them, um, cussing. And the board chalked it up to is she was just young and made some really bad decisions. So when I showed up at the board meeting, you have 3 minutes for public comment. I could not get my public comment down below 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So I had one of my friends go with me, and I said, hey, can you go live on Facebook when I start talking? Because if I get to that 3 minute mark, the board chair has the ability to allow me to continue to speak. And if you're recording, he's not going to stop me from speaking about this. And that's exactly what happened. And they just didn't realize, because they don't know and don't understand it, that all of what she did could be considered grooming. And at that time, I told them, I said, there are within 60 miles of this school, there are 4 female teachers that were just indicted for sexual relations with their kids in their classrooms. I said, and you have no idea what this woman's intentions were. I said, she didn't do anything to these people, to these kids, but you have no idea what her intentions were. So now you just let her go on paid administrative leave, and she's free to roam about the cabin to go get another job with no marks on her history, her work history.
And that is exactly how they do it.
Yep.
And they just go to another ISD.
Yep.
Not long ago, we had, and guys, if y'all want to grab a mic, we've got about, I don't know, we'll go another about 30 minutes since we were over. I don't want to go in too long because we have Radio Space is going to start his space as well. But, not long ago, we had a McKinney school that actually let McKinney ISD in Texas let a sex offender in their school who was a parent, and it took other parents finding out they were allowing him to come in the school, and he walked through the school and walked down a few halls before he went to the main auditorium where they were having their whatever it was that he was going to, watching his child go to something. But the point being, they let him go in just because he was the parent. They ignored the sex offender registry that he is registered on for life, but they let him in because he's a parent. I'm sorry, you lost that. You
Mm-hmm.
totally lost that privilege when you did something bad enough to get put on that registry. This is something that I don't believe a lot of parents are even paying attention to either. When like I just mentioned, Michelle, because you drop, I thank God that I don't have any that I have to deal with in school anymore. This is horrific to have to deal with already to even talk about, but to have to think about, oh my gosh, I'm dropping my kid off. And is the school actually even checking the people that are coming through the door at this point? Not even the teachers, everybody. They're not. And this is very concerning.
Right.
It really is. All right, guys, definitely grab a mic if you want to ask a question. Michelle, is there anything else you can think of right now that you haven't shared that you think is important for them to know? Maybe, maybe what are some of the key, I know they need all of the info in these bills, but what do you think are some of those key points in the bill that is, if you can get a perfectly written bill that would be perfectly written so that we can make sure, or is it already on your website? Or is there anything
Yeah.
that you might want to suggest that's not?
No, actually, so on my website, where I talked about the federal bill draft, that's probably one of the most comprehensive. And what I did on there, so I defined what a minor was, I defined what a mentally compromised individual is, what grooming is, because you have to define what all of these things are before you write the bill. And then probably the biggest thing is defining a kid as anybody under the age of 18, right? And then making sure that's it's a permanent sex offender registration for life. Um, I put in here too lifetime GPS or satellite monitoring if they get out on parole or probation, or it should be for life if they have any sort of grooming charges. Um, and then also a lifetime exclusion from all child-oriented locations, including but not limited to schools, daycares, libraries, churches, playgrounds, amusement parks, theme parks, arcades, movie theaters. So part of what we're trying to do is amend the current Illinois law to make it so that the sex offender registry includes places of businesses that are privately owned, places like Chuck E. Cheese, Dave and Buster's. They can go into those types of places, and those are literal playgrounds for these guys, not included on the sex offender registry because those places didn't exist when that law was written. Um, and then also, I put in here too a belief clause. It says offenders may be prosecuted if they believe the victim is a minor or mentally compromised individual, regardless of whether the victim is a law enforcement decoy. So if there's a law enforcement decoy posing as a minor, they could still be prosecuted for grooming. Um, and then also the jurisdiction, this act or law would apply for interstate communication or commerce. So it has to go between states. The conduct occurs on federal or military or tribal land, because tribal land has way different laws and it follows the federal stuff. So grooming wouldn't even apply in a tribe, and they do a lot of trafficking on some of these on the tribal lands. Travel across state lines is involved, and then any instrumentality of interstate commerce is utilized. So phones, uh, gaming systems going across state lines. And I also put that there should be no statute of limitations. So if you have a kid that's being groomed for something like this when they're 10 or 15 years old, and they finally have the courage to come out and talk about it when they're 25, there should be absolutely no statute of limitations on that. They should be able to go back and go after their offender at that point. And then there's a Romeo and Juliet exception, so that if there's two people that have had a relationship, then that wouldn't apply for this too. So like mom can't get mad at the 17-year-old boy who turns 18 just because she doesn't like them and he's been dating her 16-year-old daughter for a year. So that wouldn't apply. So the we have to allow law enforcement to do their due diligence and then just research that, right? That yes, this has happened. The one thing I didn't put in here that I sit here and think about how this could be done and put into this bill, but you have other children grooming other children in schools, because when they have a trafficking situation, it's just like the Jeffrey Epstein thing, right? So they would use the girls that they were trafficking themselves to go out and recruit for them and bring other girls in. That's grooming, and it's done by another child. So there has to be some way that you can, you know, charge somebody for that type of a thing. So that should again go back to the adult that's making that first child go and groom that other child, because they're the ones who are ultimately responsible because they're threatening that kid. So there has to be something put into place there too that could take effect. But I'm trying to take this, one piece at a time, and hopefully we can then get something like that put in place eventually.
So much good info in here tonight, guys. I sure hope y'all been taking notes, and I sure hope you replay and make sure you did not miss any, because this is so very important. Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, Michelle, I love what you're saying, and Brandy, it's always been a pleasure. It's just you start talking and something just popped in my head, and I was just kind of listening, and here's the thing I think is also important, Michelle, and maybe you can give more info and detail. But a lot of the kids that are being groomed, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of them usually have gone through some type of traumatic event. They might have lost a parent or a really close relative. Sometimes those are the easiest ins for someone to groom, and a lot of other circumstances that really just kind of open them up to to be befriended, as you would call it. So could you go into detail, kind of the things that maybe what you've been teaching? And Brandy, I know that you're also an expert on understanding this. So is Allie. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. So obviously in this case, there was this bullying incident, right? But aside from that, this teacher, I think, thought that I was still a single parent. They will tend to target single parents as well, especially single moms. Um, and we found out that there were two other boys that he did this to. One ended up testifying with my son. The other one they didn't allow to testify because there hadn't been any like real exchanges going on and no offer of anything. So the other kid, he had made a bet with him on a football game, and the reward was sexual favors. So they allowed him to testify. Um, but all three boys looked very similar. The other two boys, single parent household. And again, I think this guy thought I was from a single parent household. So they will target those types of parents. Any type of vulnerability, especially if the male is out of the house, that's something that they'll target if the male's not in the house. And my son's dad was not very involved. And I think this teacher knew that that his real dad wasn't involved. So he was trying to take that place as well. Um, and not that his dad, like, he had a relationship with him, it's just he lived far away, he wasn't around here. So I think he kind of used that a little bit to his favor. um so those things are very real. The other thing too is I knew this guy in three different areas of my life. So like we all wear different hats, right? But I'm a physical therapist. I was in this guy's house treating one of his family members for home health physical therapy at the time he started texting my son. I was also coaching softball at the same high school where he was coaching baseball. And then he knew me as the parent. So he knew me as a healthcare provider, a colleague, and a parent, probably thinking I would never think anything nefarious about this. But as soon as I heard that conversation, and what happened was, is my son was on the phone late at night on a Sunday in October, and he was really upset. He's like, I don't know how often you want me to call you. You know that I'm busy. I'm working two jobs. And he sounded like really angry. And I'm like, God, does he have a new girlfriend? And she's just like really dogging him. And then all of a sudden I hear him say, because I'm just walking past the room and I hear him say, I'll just meet you in your classroom tomorrow and pick up those paintballs. I'm like, what? So I knocked on the door and I said, who you talking to? And he told me. I said, you need to hang up the phone. Completely inappropriate that he's calling you at 11 o'clock at night. And then I went straight down to the computer, looked up that phone number on my cell phone bill, and saw that there were thousands of messages between the two numbers. So they do specifically target single parents. They'll target anybody that has any type of vulnerability, any in that they can, even if it's like, the kid's upset because mom won't give them any money to go to the mall. And the teacher happens to overhear that. I'm like, well, I'll give you some money to go to the mall. Like, that's not a big deal. So they'll use any type of anything to wedge themselves between that kid and the parent. And that's how you have to think of this, is it's a wedge. Like, they're really trying to separate that kid from that parent so that they'll try to get that kid completely away from that parent who will typically protect them. Um, you know, you when you talk about like the mama bear, right? We've seen all those cute little, things where you have the mama bear and then the cub following behind. This was a big thing during COVID. And I was like, that is not what you look like when you're fighting for your kids. And so I created, for my logo is actually a grizzly bear. It's at the top of my website. You can see it's a grizzly bear and she's got a claw coming out and mouth is wide open. And it says on there that I was a mama bear before it was cool. So that's my logo. But that's what you got to be. You have to be that grizzly bear protecting your kids. And if the person thinks that they can get between you and your child before you get to that point, that's what they're looking for. Is they're looking for that in any way they can with that kid, any vulnerability.
She did perfect. No need for me to follow up with that. 1000%. Go ahead, miss.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to say I know that it's from Guard Against Trafficking, but Ali over there did a great job on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how it correlates to vulnerabilities in your child. Obviously, like Michelle was saying, any sort of unhappiness can be a place for them to stick their crowbar. Some of these people really do have methodologies that they follow. Some of them just have do what works, but some of them are they're like they practice this and they're really good at it. So looking at that Maslow's hierarchy of needs that Ali threw together for Guard Against Trafficking, I think it's like the most comprehensive piece in that of that I've seen in that realm, and talks exactly what Michelle was describing, because that's what these people are. I hate that they're kind of being played off a little bit in some arenas, like that young woman, where it's like, oh well, maybe she was just being cool, and it's like, but the problem is that her actions looked like she was a predator, and so your predatory actions are gonna, I'm gonna view that as predatory, regardless of whoever you are, and they look for things like this. So yeah, I love that.
Right. And here's the thing that I want people to understand is as a physical therapist, like, okay, I have to learn the different muscles, right? And I have to know exactly what they are. I have to know the nerves that innervate those muscles, and I have to know all of the big words. So what I try to do and what I've done my whole career is you kind of bring it down to the layperson and let them understand it. So yes, you have the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but what people need to understand what it is just their basic needs, right? So people in here who have a hard time remembering that type of a word, it doesn't matter if you remember the actual word. Just remember that, people are looking for a safe space to sleep, they need food, they need water, um, they need protection, they need a roof over their head, they need clothing, they need friendships, all of those things. So anything that we actually probably take for granted on a daily basis, some of these kids don't have if they're coming from broken homes, right? But it wasn't even any of those things in our case. What this teacher did, and so my son thought that he could take care of this on his own. He just said, I'm not going to bother my mom about this. I don't want to be running to my mom about this and be like mama's little boy, right? So he's like, I'm going to take care of this on my own. I'm going to talk to the teacher. And most teachers would handle this professionally and do a good job and tell him, how he could handle that bullying situation and not take advantage of it. But this guy took advantage of that entire situation, and because he felt like he was coming to him for this, that he couldn't come to me. It wasn't that he couldn't come to me. It's just that he chose not to because he was trying to take care of it on his own. He was, 15, 16 years old, trying to take care of this bullying situation on his own with another adult that he thought he could trust. So that's the thing. And that comes down to like a self-esteem kind of a thing, right? A self-esteem need. So just, that's what he went to him for. So those are the things, and that's where Maslow's hierarchy of needs comes from. And it's just those basic everyday things that you need that you may not be able to get that somebody else can give you and will drive that wedge between you and the adult in your life.
And as adults, I'm sure some of us are thinking about some people when we were growing up, the more we think about these things. I know I do. It's
Hmm.
a crazy world out there. And there was a comment down below that was so right. It used to be pushed under the rug. Well, it's not anymore. And it never will
No,
be again. Not if we have anything to do with it. That's for
right,
sure.
right. Yeah, and
Oh
I
my
think too,
goodness.
like they thought that I would just go away, right? I think they wanted me to just go away, and we don't have enough to go on. If there was just another kid that could corroborate this story, all of these things. And the one thing that Amy Coelho told me, who was the trafficking investigator I met, she goes, Michelle, you did the one thing that most parents don't do, is you didn't take no for an answer from somebody who was in a position of authority over you, and you kept pushing. If you couldn't find one way, you'd get another doorway in, and you'd find another way to get there. And she said most people just give up. And I just feel like we're all made for something, right? God has done so much work in all of our lives growing up, and I played softball in college as an athlete. I wouldn't take no for an answer. I'm like, I'm going to win every single time. I'm going to go down swinging. I'm not going to look at the called third strike, right? So these are the things that in my head, and I've just been made that way. So when it came to this, I'm like, oh no, you're not going to do this to my kid, nor are you going to do this to another kid, and I'm going to stop this guy from doing this to any other kid. So that's where the whole drive comes from, is just that's how I was made. And sometimes I feel like I have to apologize for it because I do get kind of bulldogish, but just if you just stop being stupid, I won't be a bulldog. Like, that's the thing, right? So that's just it. It's just don't give up on your kids and fight for them as hard as you can. And when somebody is in a position of authority over you as an adult, even, and they're not doing the right thing, push back, and push back as hard as you can, because that's what got this to go forward, is just that tenacity and my son's willingness to come forward.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, thank you to him. And I know he's not listening, but I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to him,
Hmm.
because this is his story, right? And y'all are so very big on making sure that this continues to protect other children, and that's so very important because we all can make sure that, again, the reason we did this space tonight, guys, we can all make sure that our state has a grooming bill. And I'm going to start shutting down a little bit with some last words on this, and then we're going to go around to everyone. But we really need to make sure that these laws are into place. What you don't realize sometimes is that, once something occurs, if that law is not where it needs to be to protect your child and to be used when it needs to be, it doesn't matter. We need to make sure these things are in place prior to needing them to be used. And one more thing, Michelle, I'm sure someone has looked at this. We've struggled with bills in Texas and around other states as well, because people will write bills and then it will go into law, but they don't realize that it doesn't have an enforcement mechanism. Have y'all verified that for sure this is something that is enforceable, or is that something that each person in every state needs to verify with their state?
Yeah, so most of them are enforceable. And it's interesting because when I went to Indiana to testify, they actually had an attorney testify as to whether they could actually use that bill or not, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't seen that anywhere before. And they did say that they could use that bill, and the police officers as well. And that's something that, so Allie helped me with the Florida bill. Allie and I have become very good friends, Allie Hopper. And so she was doing a class for Guard Against Trafficking, and it was with a bunch of cops. And one of the cops, when she started talking about the grooming bill in Florida, he's like, "Oh my gosh, that was you?" And he said, "We were waiting for it to go through so we could actually charge this guy with that." So they were waiting for that bill that to become law specifically so that they could charge the guy that they were watching with grooming, and got him. So it was a matter of just days after that became law that they put that into enforcement. Same thing happened in Wisconsin. It became law. It was about 3 weeks later that they actually charged somebody with grooming.
That's awesome. Love to hear it. Oh man. Well, we have had a power packed space tonight. I want to thank you again so very much for all your work, and you're constantly on the move, whether it's your local area or the other states. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
absolutely. And guys, y'all did hear earlier, go up to her website. It's up top. Please do what you can, do what you feel called to do. If you would like to donate, please do support her. She is not an organization. She is michellepeterson.com. So we need to definitely make sure she can continue doing what she is doing. And unfortunately, and Michelle, you know this all too well, in this type of work, it's so needed, but it's not paid. No one's paying Michelle to do this work
No,
to protect
no.
the children all around the United States, right? So definitely, make sure you're following her as well. Share her information out. But I definitely do believe, just like I've said before, advocate for education. She was in here earlier. I always like to promote her, just like I do you as well, because y'all are mamas on a mission that are making this happen no matter what. And when we are able to take the information that you have fought so hard to put together and share out, we need to make sure we're compensating for that if we can. And so I like to personally say, when I use things like this, I like to donate to that person because it did take their time and their money, right, to do all the things that they do. So please do what you feel called to do, but make sure that you're following Michelle and you're at least sharing her information out. That is something free we can do to support anyone. Michelle, do you have any last words for the space?
I always just end it with, you know, believe your children. And there are those people out there who are making false allegations, but those usually come to the surface pretty quickly. But believe your kids and fight for them 100%, tooth and nail as hard as you can. And if it's not your kid and somebody else's kid, fight for that kid too and support that person who's going through that. Um, yeah, that's the biggest thing. And just get this education out there. Let people know what this looks like because it's not the white van syndrome. It's somebody who's in your circle.
That sends chills down your bones just thinking about that. Mm-mm-mm. All right, Zachary, you want to say something real quick, and we'll go over to our co-host because we've lost all our other speakers, so we can go a little faster tonight. Thank you, Zach. All right, go ahead, Kim, and then we'll go over to Mist. And she's
Thank y'all
running.
so much. Yes, I know. Actually, I was brushing my teeth. Thank you so much for being here tonight, everyone, and Michelle. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry y'all had to go through that. But like you said, y'all having to go through it is what saved, other children and basically what got a lot of things rolling. So thank you. Thank you from one mom to another. Thank you.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Thank you.
I was thinking something earlier. There's things that, you just don't. I mean, okay, what episode is this? 112? And Brandy, I think is probably Michelle saying something earlier, and it triggered something in me earlier. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I was in a situation that was getting started. I had no idea that's what was happening, going back and looking at it because I had childhood friends. I was always going over and stuff. And then they had an older brother. And, I just remember one day stuff not being correct. And let's just say, those of you that know me, let's just say that boy was hurting by the time I left that house. But I didn't put the siblings in with it, So, like I said, episode 112, and I'm still learning. So thank you, Brandy. And again, thank you so much, Michelle.
You're
Um,
welcome.
I,
Thank you for being here.
oh, absolutely. Well, I kind of have to go with Brandy.
Yeah, big sister would get in trouble if she wasn't in here tonight. Go ahead, Mist.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Michelle for coming in and teaching us all this stuff and putting together these templates of knowledge for us to just use and repeat as we go forward. It makes our jobs a lot easier as we do things as we go forward and try to further these goals. So just thanks, Michelle, for that. And I think this whole thing just shows that it all comes down to having the hard conversations. You got to have the hard conversations with each other. You got to have the hard conversations with your kids, and you got to have the hard conversations with your lawmakers, because these things will enable us to protect our kids better as we go forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, guys, it is time to shut it down. We are going to play a song first, but I want to thank everyone. And first of all, I want to thank Michelle for being our first speaker back. This was an awesome space tonight, a lot of information. Please, guys, if you did not get the whole thing, definitely replay. There was a lot of information shared in here tonight. And like most of our spaces, it is a lot. So grab your notebook if you didn't catch it all and replay it. There, the call to action tonight is to make sure that your state has a grooming bill, has a grooming law. Well, bills can become laws. So make sure there is a law. If there's not, well, even if there is, go to Michelle's website and make sure that those bills slash laws have what they need to have the right teeth in them to be able to get someone under this grooming law. This is so very important. What you don't understand is a lot of the trafficking cases start with grooming. And there's so much that people don't realize until it's already too much, right? And then you don't know what to do as a parent or a friend or to the parent or whatever, whoever you are. So please just make sure you're educating your communities with what you're hearing in our space. This is not just a feel good, let's talk space. We want you to take this information and share it out to the masses. We want your community to know how to protect the children so that we don't have to see their children up on the billboards missing or someone being trafficked. Again, I want to thank y'all so very much for coming in. Tonight was 112. We will be back next Tuesday night. We are getting back to our regular schedule. We will also have one on Thursday morning, which is Circle of Protection, and that's where Shepherd's Watch up here on a microphone will be hosting. Go ahead and make sure you're following that profile. We are on Thursday mornings from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time. That's 10 to 12 Eastern. And then again, of course, like I said, we'll be back next Tuesday. We are a part of that conservative space network. So I want to say tonight is not done yet. There's one more space tonight. If y'all are still up and want to wind down a little bit, it's a lot of fun, actually. It has been. Radio Face hosts the Popcorn Tub. That's a fun space. So definitely come over there. And I just want to say I've already put it down below, but there is a video of literally spaces all day long in the network, guys, that y'all can watch. Zach, I love you, but I'm trying to shut down. And unless you're like having a heart attack, I don't want you to interrupt me because I want to keep going. Okay, I love you. That's Punch Bowl, Marlin Space, Reality Check, Save the Children, of course. Also, you have Tell Me Your Story with Zach, Main Street versus Wall Street, versus with Wall Street, the Round Table on X, Grand Jury, Liberty X, All Things Self Defense, and Holy Health Apothecary. So, all right, Zach, you want to say something before I start our song? Thank you. Yes, do not come over there and grab a mic, guys, and want to put your hand up. They will make fun of you. It is a hands free space. Just saying. All right, we are going to send us off tonight. Again, I want to thank y'all so very much for being here for our space back. And we had a really good one. And we hope you are back next week. And we will definitely see y'all Thursday morning. And I'm scrolling to find my song. All right, here we go. I was trying to talk until I found it. All right, y'all have a blessed night. Here we go. Oh, hold on. I am out of it tonight, guys. I had to get Shepherd's Watch out of here so we didn't have a bad echo. All right, here we go. I'll get back in the tune of it. It's been a while. All right, y'all take care and have a blessed night. I don't know what just happened there. Let's try that again.
In the neon glow of a lone star sky, predators circle with the innocent shine. 1,000 ads a day, brothels in the night, kids getting pulled in, flashing lights. Boots on the ground, eyes open wide, private eyes and prayers, standing side by side. They don't care about your vote or your side of town, just a circle around the children, holding the line down. You see the smiles in the everyday lives, the devil in the details where the vulnerable cry. But the watch is keeping time. Tactical and true, circle of protection. Drawn around the time. Hands together, hearts on fire. In the fight, shepherds watching over through the storm and the fire. The darkness turning on into us. No matter the cost, for the least of these, we carry the cross, serving protection. Hold on through the night. And that's what happens when you don't have your laptop charged up. We'll see y'all next week.
Stay in the fight. Stay in the fight. Yeah. When it gets hard, that's when it matters most. Stay in the fight. Yeah, when it gets hard, that's when it matters most. 10, I've been knocked down more than I can count. Felt that doubt. Yeah, when it gets hard, that's when it matters most. 10, I've been knocked down more than I can count. Felt that doubt trying to take me out. Every scar got a story to tell. Every fall was a living hell, but I'm still here, still standing strong. Even when everything went wrong, something deep won't let me break, won't let me fade. When the weight gets heavy and the road gets long, when the voice in your head says you don't belong, that's the moment you decide to stand and fight. Stay in the fight. Don't you quit. Dig down deep, give everything you got left. Stay in the fight. Stand your ground even when the world tries to take you down. Through the pain, through the fire, through the grind, you don't break, you redefine. Stay in the fight with all your might. You were born to win this fight. I've seen darkness I can't explain. Felt that pressure, felt that pain. But every time I hit that wall, I refuse to fall. They can doubt me, they can hate, they can try to seal my fate, but I rise every single time, 'cause this life is mine. When your back's against it and you can't breathe, when you're hanging on by a thread, again. If I